darlings, and welcome back to Radio Wasteland. I am Chauncey Haworth, your fearful host, and this is my sidekick tonight, Sean.
Hello.
Sean. All right, Sean, I'd like to tell you a little story.
All right, I'm listening.
Although you were there. A couple weeks ago, we had a show about Nibiru.
I remember this well.
Yeah. And, we sat around and we bantered back and forth about the history of Zecharia Sitchin, and we really covered a lot of the history. But
I may have said some snarky things about the likelihood of Nibiru being a thing.
Right, yeah. I'm familiar with your lousy attitude, Sean.
Okay.
And, before the show, I had done some prep work, and I had gone to a couple of Facebook groups, and asked some questions and so on and so forth. And I really got a lot of vague answers out of those questions, although a lot of them ended their communications with me with time is short.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that in an existential sense.
Right.
We are all mortal and doomed to die eventually.
I think they were being a little more specific.
Okay.
But So we did the show, and they listened, and I appreciate them listening. But afterwards, they were none too pleased with our show. They thought we were very uneducated on the topic, at least in its current state.
Yes, I am guilty of that.
And, I guess they were right. There's some stuff in the news about the end is nigh sometime in October, stuff like that. And so what I did is I went back to this group, and I asked them, well, who should we be going after to find out more? And
Truth seekers that we are.
Right, and they connected me with tonight's guest, Samuel Hofman.
Uh-huh.
And I was a little wary at first, because I kind of felt like there was a big shroud of doom and gloom over where this group was coming from. And but I've talked to Samuel several times, and he is not a doom and gloom guy. He is not the end is nigh and stuff like that. He is articulate, and he is going to share with us tonight his views on us being a binary solar system.
Wouldn't that involve there being an extra sun?
That would. That is exactly what that would involve.
Clearly, I have only dipped my finger into the massive bathtub that is this topic.
That's true. Most solar systems that we have found, statistically, most solar systems that we have found are binary.
Really?
Yeah. So binary is actually the norm. To be a solitary solar system is much less common. So, that might add a little something to this. But there's something extra mysterious about space. If you learn something about the dirt and you learn something about an animal, you can go see that animal in the zoo. You can learn about the dirt upon which you stand. But space is something that we are really ultimately just taking a lot of people's word for.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about how we come to these observations, it's smart people, to be sure, but, they're looking through their massive telescopes, and they're, looking at a lot of numbers on pieces of paper. It's
right, things
whether or not they're right, it is very abstract.
Yeah, and generally beyond your normal brain's comprehension, at least beyond mine, and I'm at least as smart as the average bear, I think.
Sure. The average person.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So, I mean, the moon is a prime example. A lot of people think we didn't go to the moon, and everybody's, well, that's lame. But, for that stuff to have been faked, it was scientifically, technologically possible for them to fake it at the time.
Sure.
Meaning what's going on now, So I think a large part of what we're going to learn about is why this is being hidden from us, why this is not being communicated to us.
Well, that is a good question. I would like to know the answer. I don't know fully what we're talking about, but the idea of someone not telling me something rankles me a little bit. So,
well, just to recap a little bit of the history, the Zecharia Sitchin, he translated ancient cuneiform tablets from Sumer and Mesopotamia, and translated them as fact that there was another planet, Nibiru, that was on a 3,600-year orbit. Since then, it's sort of evolved into maybe not being a planet, but being part of its own binary solar system, so it's actually its own star with its own set of planets around it.
Well, we didn't cover that at all last time. We were just talking.
We touched down on it, but a lot of what we were touching down on was the history of Zacharias.
Well, we talked a little bit about the real Planet X ideas that were circulating out there.
Right.
And the idea that there may be some shadowy ice giant, like Neptune, for example, floating around there influencing other bodies that we can detect.
Right. Well, tonight we're going to find out what the truth is.
Okay. I like truth. I'm a big fan.
All right.
To be honest.
You're listening to Radio Wasteland. When we come back, we have guest Samuel Hofman. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We have our guest tonight, Samuel Hofman. Are you on the air with us, Sam?
I sure am. How are you doing today?
Oh, good. I'm really happy that you were able to make it onto the show. I'm happy to learn what you have to tell us. I was thinking I would start out with, just kind of cut to the chase and ask you, how did you initially get involved with the topic of Nibiru? Because when I go around and I talk to people about it, a lot of people just kind of raise an eyebrow and don't know really what I'm talking about at all.
Well, I've known about the existence of the second solar system attached to ours, binary solar system. We actually have two groups of planets with two suns. And I wrote a paper on that in 1978-79 for a junior high school term paper. And my professor, or an adjoining professor at the school that I was going to a college preparatory private school, and they turned that into a National Science Academy paper. And a few months later, the NSA and the FBI were having coffee with my parents at my house when I came home from school. And they basically offered me a job and made me sign a 30-year non-disclosure agreement prior to even telling me what this job was about. And they paid attention to the fact that my paper discussed the basics that we had to have two suns in order for the planetary count that we had within our solar system to actually be accurate, because according to atomic mass, etc., there was no possible way that our dwarf yellow soul could hold all these planets, especially with the gas giants and everything way out away from the center of the solar system. So they were really interested in me, and they basically had me sign this agreement, and then this and that and the other thing transpired between the information, and I've known about it basically for about 38 years. I'll just leave it at that.
I see. So, so you discovering this, what made you, discovering the fact that there are other planets and a binary system does not necessarily give it the label of Nibiru. What caused you to connect the two of those together?
Well, I got that information from an off-world source that happened some years later, because I had been approached by more than one faction. And I basically ended up meeting face-to-face with a Pleiadian at one point in time. That's another story altogether that I don't really want to go into too much. But it's basically an abduction story. And when they found out that they could not control me, they were really surprised by this event, so they went and looked me up, and then when they looked me up and found out who I was or who I will be according to them, which is, it's kind of a time loop twisty thing with the Pleiadians, because apparently they're supposedly from the future, etc. So that's another story as well. They came to me and gave me a handful of information that had matched, and not only that, I was told from the government, basically, and come to find out through the sharing of the information, that I was questioning why only a 30-year non-disclosure agreement, and they said, well, after that, it won't matter. And then, of course, we got the information from
That's terrifying.
Zacharias Sitchin and all these other things that pointed to it. Way back in the 70s, they had the Planet X discussion about the aberration in the orbit beyond uh, Uranus and all of that, and they were wondering about the Planet X system.
Mm.
Well, through the information that I discovered, I knew that they were going to be here, and most everyone back, 25 years ago also knew about that, who was studying into it, that Planet X would arrive within a certain period of time. And along about 2009, early 2010, I'm out in my yard, and I'm looking up, and all of a sudden I see, holy cow, I see a full-on side-lit 2/3 crescent flare of a very massive, massive planet. And I immediately knew, oh my God, they're here. And then the information that I was given and another series of information that I looked up on the internet come 2009, 2010 as well, I found some information that fell into place that matched that which I had already learned. And I went, holy cow. Now, that information you can't even drum up on the internet today, because a good portion of the information that they have had up there at one point in time has been removed, because they're doing their darndest to shut this down as much as they can. Now, they let a lot of these sites that are running on and rambling about disinformation, they leave those guys alone. But the people who are accurate, they get crushed. They get shut down. They get blocked. 2 months after I started doing openly talking about what I knew, after my non-disclosure agreement had ended, because believe me, the threats were so strong, I never said a word about this prior to anyone. I followed the rules, period. But anyway, I just lost the topic. But
that's
anyway,
right.
I ramble on. Go ahead and ask me your next question.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Have I answered your question?
There's too many of them to count. So as long as we're getting some great information, that's all we care about. You're doing fine.
Well, I'm hoping that because sometimes I digress off the topic.
Well, it's not a problem. So you did end up working with the government for a while then.
Briefly, for a short period of time. I ran into some scientists face to face, and we were discussing, and they were asking me how I could base my subatomic theory on why the solar system. I believe in the electric universe. I don't believe in the standard gravitational put forth by Einstein and them searching for the unification model, because Einstein's theory is basically incorrect. And everything is, we live in an electric universe. Everything is the same in the subatomic set of chemistry rules, as well as in the astroatomic. Now, I've referred to it as astroatomic because that's how I believe it to be. So that which exists in the finite, in the tabletop, also exists in space. It's the same set of rules, unification period. One rule.
I see. And so how did your relationship with the government end?
The scientists got really upset with me, and they started calling me names to my face, and I run into this still to this day. When people find that their beliefs are laid out the way they are, and you hit cognizant dissonance, all of a sudden they get very mad at you, and they get very, I know what I know, and you can't tell me different. So they start screaming at me, and I finally said I'd had enough of this. But unfortunately, I was being treated at that time as pretty much a prisoner, and I was told that I couldn't leave the country. I had to remain in federal government employee, and period, et cetera, et cetera. And this, we're approaching on some material I don't really like to talk about, but
that's right.
Basically, we were rather not getting along very well. They had given me a house and a car and all of this other stuff, but basically what it was is I was going to end up living, on the base at Langley for the rest of my life, as far as I could see. So I was very uncomfortable with this, and so they brought me back to Montana after I begged to be released, and supposedly, now I don't really remember a good portion of parts of it because my memory was supposedly erased, and because that was the only way I was going to be allowed to leave. So they brought me back to Montana in handcuffs and dropped me off and said, you don't exist anymore, and you better go back and re-sign up for the rest of the world, which is what I ended up having to do. And I got back to my apartment, and my roommates had wondered where I'd been, and they had re-rented out my apartment to somebody else because I'd been gone for so long, months and months and months. And so, anyway.
All right. So do you find that you find a lot of scientific... Now, I realize that you have an ample following of people, like myself, online, but do you find that other scientists are starting to agree with you?
A lot of people are, a lot of science is just starting to catch up with the electric universe theory. Now, we don't spiral around our solar system in the same place, like on a dinner plate and with a gravity well like Einstein proposed. What we do is we fall in a static spiral behind our star, which moves in virgin space constantly, and we're currently heading toward the middle of the galactic plane. People out there may have noticed that our stars have changed really drastically in the last 9 or 10 years to constellations aren't where they're supposed to be, the Milky Way has moved, etc. Because we're traveling to the northern ecliptic plane of our galaxy, which is also defined in the Mayan calendar by the 13th Baktun. And so what we are is we're a pair of tandem stars that are spiraling. Now, 83% of all solar systems have two or more, a binary or a trinary or a quaternary group of stars. And in some cases, some stars can actually be, an older star can be embedded in the side of a new star even. So there's a lot going on that standard teachings and standard education do not actually understand. We travel in a spiral. It's like when you pull one sock out of the dryer, you get three. It has to do with the static cling and the Nibiru system, and its 8 planets, and our system and our 9 planets. Of course, we removed Pluto and Ceres and.
Well, let me cut you off there. We'll get right back. We'll get right back into that.
Overall planet count than people realize. We're kind of a compound in space. We're a chemistry equation.
Well, we're about to go to break. Let me cut you off right there, and we're going to come back to what these two solar systems entail, what planets they entail. Right after the break, we have Samuel Hofman as our guest on Radio Wasteland. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland, and our guest, Samuel Hofman. We are talking about Nibiru. Samuel, were you with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, great. So, it seems like in the history of Nibiru, initially it was considered to be a planet, its own planet, but in your model, it is one of several planets around its own star. Is that correct?
Correct. There is a standard red attached to, or they're attached to the standard red. There is Nibiru, which is approximately 7 times the size of Earth. Ceru, which is 5 times the size of Earth. Now, those are both water-type planets, which is the one size up compared to a rock-type planet, which is Earth, etc. There is 2 gas giants, Attu and Uri. Uri is the larger of the two. It's got huge white-gray stripes. Attu is very, very purple. Now, Nibiru is a deep, dark blue, and Ceru is a light greenish blue because its oceans are less deep. There is Isatum, which is a reddish planet and has a yellow-faced moon, is what puts off the winged tail that everybody through internet blow-up has assumed is Nibiru. Nibiru is not a red planet. Now, the red planet they're talking about is the gas, or is the massive, huge Imiru, which is currently on the opposite side of our sun, or should I say our suns, because currently right now both of our suns are tandemly orbiting each other. And the crazy stuff that's going on with our sun has to do with the larger standard red drawing off the energy backwards towards it. Now, it arrived after the others ones, and I have to reinsert this. It's actually not them arriving to us, it's us arriving to them. Our solar system joins with their solar system every 3,654 years through a static scenario, and or for other reasons that are beyond me. And then they have a static discharge between the two suns, and that was the backblow CMEs back in early 2012, and you can go look that up. There's Isatum, there's Nibiru, Isatum, Nepesity, and Matim. Matim is a small, tiny blue planet, and Nepesity is green, and as we previously discussed, Isatum is reddish.
So I noticed that you said that I guess before we move on, does the star itself have a name, like ours is Sol?
I couldn't hear you. Could you say that again, please?
Does the star itself have a name?
I don't know.
Because a lot of people
really
call it Nemesis. I just didn't know if you went with
standard red. Now, we watched it come in and join in roughly late 2011. It started showing up in our membership from Montana Skywatchers on Facebook. We saw our members started capturing pictures of it. And then it got closer and closer and closer. And we first noticed that Nibiru was one of the major planets that we started seeing. Now, perhaps some of the other ones escaped our attention prior to, because recognition of these planets is not necessarily that easy, because people assume that you're going to see a planet, this little thing way off in the distance. And basically, they came in from underneath us, or we joined, and they were below us, and we were above them, so they came up upon our ecliptic plane over a period of time. And the first major sightings of Nibiru was up in the north, and myself and some other folks up north of me were comparing, and that's what we do on our website on Facebook, is we use all of the members to compare sky shots. And then when you have a cloud that exists, say, for instance, in Maine, or a cloud that the same cloud exists in California and the same cloud exists in France, well, excuse me, that's not a cloud, that's something above the clouds. So we started noticing these patterns, and it had matched some of my information, and we weren't fully sure yet of the names and everything until one after another, after about 2 years, they filed in, and they matched all the information that we had. So prior to that, we were just calling it the blue planet and the red planet and and the green planet. And then the thing with it is, and this is something I really have to stress because I hear this all the time from people. Well, I was looking next to the sun and it was way out there, but they have been between us and the sun, and so we've only seen their dark side for a period of time, and only just recently have they started coming in behind us where they're being facially illuminated. And that was within the last, since probably about February of this year. And that has affected the magnetospheres, imagery in a lot of the computer models that we're seeing as well. And we've had many close passes toward Earth. And what people don't understand is these are sky fillers. They're not these little dots out there in space. You're not looking for a little round thing the size of the moon even. You're looking for something that is passing close by. And Nibiru and Saru are so massive, as well as Uri. Uri is quite large as well. They are so massive, they literally fill one end of our sky to the other. And the best way to find these guys is to look up with a pair of gray-black sunglasses. Don't get welding glasses or anything like that because you won't see it, especially, it's just all green. But what you're looking for is a dark blue shadow in the sky. If you go back to movies that were filmed in the 70s and the 80s, you see this, just everything's a standard light, pretty blue with normal little clouds. But if you look at our clouds today, there's these dark areas. They're shadowy, and it's kind of like, wow, what's that? And especially folks down at sea level. See, I'm up here in Montana, and I'm about 5,000 feet, and we get a completely different view up here than everybody down at sea level in the lower levels. So what the folks down at the lower levels need to look for are these dark areas. And each one of the planets, when they come for a sequential close pass, they put off a base cloud. And there's a group of pattern-forming clouds that they all have their independent own kind. Now, on our site, that we've drawn pictures of this. We've seen it over the last 7 years that they've been here. And so we've come to identify who was who and what the base cloud of Uri is very bubbly. And in a lot of cases, over the last 4 or 5 months, we've had Uri directly over the top of us. And it literally cuts off half the sun. And this is why we've had a dimming and a hazing, and everything looks milky for those people at the lower levels. And they kind of wonder, like, what's wrong with the sun? Well, it's because half of our sunlight is being cut off. And then there's a lot of folks on the Mexican webcams and everything who have been seeing this huge, humongous flaring in the sky. And that is a facial illumination of the planet that is cutting off the sun, because the sunlight goes into the atmosphere and then it refracts and then illuminates inside the atmosphere of the planet and creates this huge halo effect. And it's not a lens flare or anything like this. This is an actual existent flare that is created from the cutoff of the planets, cutting off the distance view between us and our star.
Well, I have a question for you here.
Go ahead.
At one point, you were saying that the orbit is every 3,600 years. Now, that's the same orbit that Zecharia Sitchin had said for Nibiru as the 12th planet.
Right.
In our case, it'd be the 9th planet, but, there's a story behind that, and we all get that.
Right.
So, do you think that Zecharia Sitchin was on to something?
Well, I think it was horrendously accurate. The clay tablets from the Sumerian people were very accurate. They were written down, I believe, at the either beginning or prior to the last cycle. Now, if you look back through history, 3,654 years ago, which was the end of the Mycenaean period and the beginning of the Bronze Age, we had this quote-unquote sinking of Atlantis. We had I'm trying to think of those places in Greece and Rome where all of the volcanoes went.
Like Vesuvius.
Pompeii and all of that occurred. Major climate change. It even is written in the Bible that, that there are two suns. And we, the smaller of the sun, took care of the earth.
So, do you think that there's life on any of these planets?
I know for a fact there is.
So there is.
Yes, there are three life. I'm told that there are three life forms that live on this group of planets.
So he was on to something with this.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, I don't for a second doubt his material at all. That or Immanuel Velikovsky, Worlds in Collision.
Right.
I understand a good portion of his material, and I agree with 90-some-odd% of it.
Okay, well, we're coming up on break here. I got a few more questions for you after break. You're listening to Radio Wasteland with our guest, Samuel Hofman, talking about Nibiru. Stick around. Welcome back to Radio Wasteland with our guest, Samuel Hofman. We are talking about Nibiru. We're coming up. This is our last segment of the show, so I got a big question to ask you, Samuel, and that is, why don't people want us to know this? We have rock star physicists, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku, these people who are out there educating and having people know, and people are following them like the rock stars of physics. Why don't they want us to know about this?
Well, first of all, if we knew the truth about our existence, we wouldn't be so pleased about it. The powers that be that are currently ruling our planet right now are swiftly jostling for a level of authority and to maintain their power. The Earth has a tendency
I think
to
everybody
break
would
up
agree with that
in geological terms and weather terms at every visit. But that is a necessity to the function of our planet. We are a factory planet. We produce commodities that the other planets use for the other races. And part of these commodities, one of the major commodities, is gold. And Earth has to re-break up with tectonic plate transference of electricity between quartz electricity, etc., to remake the next supply of gold. They consume it in their diet, they use it in their technology, it prolongs their life in monatomic gold, etc. And that's why you'll find most of the early landing bases with these large, gigantic stones that we can't carve and move to this day yet, the 100-ton monoliths and stuff that have been moved over the past, there's a couple in Jerusalem and here and there. And those are all at sites where the monatomic gold can be retrieved from, like the Dead Sea is number one, I believe. And they take in this monatomic gold, and it prolongs the other race's life, whereas we are a short-lived version of 12 separate races that have been combined genetically to make that which we are today.
Are we, as a lot of people have speculated, are we created to be slave labor?
Correct.
Yeah. And this is why people don't want us to know?
Do not want us to know that because they're jostling for a level of control over us. And basically what happens and you can go back in history, and we would at one point in time boil down to like 273 individuals that are making up our genetic makeup now that they've got the genome tracking abilities that they do have. Every 3,654 years, there's a basic culling of the herd, and then we start all over again, and ingrained in our genetic makeup is our lust for gold. Now, gold is actually a luminescent product on its own. It actually puts off light. It isn't just pretty. It actually has a positive charge that other soft metals have less of, but gold has some very unique properties to it. And if you consume it, it will actually help you self-heal. You can heal yourself by consuming monatomic gold. And there goes the prices on the stock shelves all over the country. But they don't, and we can go into, the 9/11 thing and all of that gold disappearing, but I'd rather not.
Right. Well, I have a question for you. So when I first got connected with you, it was via some people in a Facebook group, and they really felt that I didn't know what I was talking about as far as current Nibiru is concerned. And frankly, from talking to you, they were totally right. I'm not trying to set them up. But here's the thing that they did that really kind of concerned me is the end of their communications a lot of the time ended with time is short and things like that, these sort of nefarious, scary sayings. So my question to you is, your average Joe out here like myself and everybody else, should we be scared?
Well, currently there is a vast amount of underreporting of what's going on around the planet, and this is part of why we have member scientists, member researchers, whatever you want to call them, all over the world. I have people in Hong Kong I talk to daily. There's people in Canada, Mexico, California, France. Some of my videos I'm told that my YouTube videos have just been translated to French, which is kind of interesting. I chuckled over that.
You do have a very impressive online presence, I have to
tell. Thank you. And the main, when I first started this, we couldn't find any current information. Everything was old or completely inaccurate. And so we formed up our group, and over the last 7 years, it's become a very large following. And I wouldn't be standing here talking today with this information if it wasn't through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of actual photographs of these planets from around the world in close past. And we've seen their behavior, we've seen their base cloud, we know what they look like when they come in a close past. Now, I have to state for the average person that the planets do not crash into each other. They electrically repel on close passes. And you have heard stories, I'm sure, of cattle herds dying and by, the numbers, and people being electrocuted by the dozens and these lightning strikes. And we just recently had a whole bunch of passes across the East Coast and up in Canada within the last month or two. And there are close passes occurring to this day. And the weather is drastically changing. There's flooding all over the world. The Earth is currently tipped, and it is wobbling like crazy. The North Pole is going around in a spiral, and we're being buffered by these passing planets, as well as what's been going on with our magnetosphere. And as they come in behind us, they disrupt our entire magnetosphere because they're larger planets and they have a larger magnetic field, which displaces ours. So there's been a lot of extreme weather. There's droughts where there normally wouldn't. There's water in the desert where it normally isn't. There's snow currently. We had it snow here yesterday up here in Montana. Normally that doesn't happen up here. And we've currently got these weather patterns. And I must also say that in the SEC geostationary satellite imagery, we're seeing a regular daily shadowing where there's a passing planet that is cutting off a good portion of our sun, and the whole United States is being knocked into a dark shadow. And all you have to do is go up on the internet, and you can watch it on set every day. Proof that there is an object that is close passing Earth and casting a shadow on us, which is also what's kicking up some of the cold air and the rotational storms and et cetera, et cetera. So what we're seeing is direct influence geologically, earthquakes, storms, hurricanes, on-land hurricanes in the northern hemisphere, which never used to exist. We see, I'm looking currently right now at multiple rotational storms At some point in time, a month or two ago, it was 66 degrees in the Antarctic. And when we first started doing this, we were looking at pictures from Newmeyer Station and stuff like that. And Newmeyer Station was illuminated when it was supposed to be dark for months. And everybody caught on to that. Thought, well, isn't this place supposed to be absolutely pitch dark? But it wasn't.
Well, let me cut you off there, Samuel.
Underneath us. And that's why they sent Dr. Harrington, who used my paper, by the way, down to Australia so they could set up the SETI Alpha program to watch the beginning of the entry or the joining of the two systems.
Samuel, I need to cut you off there. We're coming up on the end of the show, and I'd like to give our audience a chance to hear where they can find out more about you.
Okay.
Do you have any of that to share?
Oh, do you want me to talk?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Oh, yeah. That's right. You're warning me ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on Facebook, and you can go to Montana Skywatchers 2, and we let just about everybody in there. Hopefully, as long as you got a face on your pic, and you can get as much information as we have listed. I'm also on YouTube. It's Understanding the Skies by Samuel Hofman. It's on the James Klingler channel. They've got me blocked. I can't even use YouTube. I can't post on many sites. I just recently got onto Skype because I'm using someone else's email, which may fail now after I've said this publicly. But that's the best way to get hold of me is on the Facebook site, because apparently it's not viewed as too big of a thing. Otherwise, they would have me shut down there as well, and that may yet come.
Okay, well, you've been listening to Samuel Hofman on Radio Wasteland. That's Hofman with one F. And he's right, he has a very large Facebook community. If you search for Samuel Hofman in pages, you will definitely find it. You'll also find his YouTube channel, which is chock full of videos explaining these things in more detail, and they are really quite articulate and well-done videos, so go check them out. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Thank you very much.